Hi, welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about the present perfect. So what it is, how do we use it? Um, well, the present perfect is used to talk about we're going to use it to talk about um, something that happened in the past but continues happening in the present. Okay, so how do I do that? If we think about a timeline with the past, the present, and the future, we're going to be focusing on something that started in the past and continues on to the present. Okay? Now, we start off with, first of all, the situation when we use the present perfect. Um, and we're going to use it for questions using how long. So, how long, if we remember correctly from our previous lessons in English, we know that how long is talking about some sort of duration. But in this case, it's not exactly duration. We're not asking about uh, the duration of something. We're going to be asking about something that happened in the past, that it might still be continuing in the present, so right now. Uh, so to formulate a question like this, we're going to use how long, okay, plus the present perfect, and then everything else that goes after that, such as an object, uh, and then we finish the question. So to do this, we have to understand how to formulate the present perfect. We have to understand how to do this. The present perfect is formulated using the verb have, so to have, plus the past participle. So to have plus the past participle. And so you might be asking yourself, okay, how do I conjugate this? Well, the past participle we know that it ends either in ed or there's going to be a couple of irregular ones. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So what we really have to be watching out for is the verb to have, which we're going to conjugate in the present with our subject. Okay? Right. So how do I do this? Well, if we have a couple of a list of subjects, suppose we have I, you, he, she, it, okay, we, and they. So the verb to have, I hope you can see that. How do I conjugate? I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, they have. Okay? So we're going to use the verb to have as an auxiliary verb, as a helper verb, to help us form the present perfect. Now, how do I do this, the present perfect? We just said that it's the verb to have plus the past participle. So if I have the verb, for example, if I have the verb ask, okay, the past participle of ask is asked with an ed. So how do I do this? The present perfect is I, if the subject is I, have asked. Maybe our subject is she. How do I do this? Well, we conjugate have with she, meaning she has asked. Okay? Here's our subject and our present perfect. Okay? Our present perfect, which is made up of the verb to have and the past participle. Okay, so far so good. So now how do I formulate the question for how long? Well, how long? We're going to use how long with the present perfect. Now, the present perfect, in order to use it with how long, we just saw that the present perfect, we say, for example, I have, she has, okay? But to use it in a question, we're going to use have before the subject, okay? So we're going to have how long plus the present perfect, present perfect, okay? And in this case, because it's a question, it's not going to be subject-verb, but we're going to use verb-subject, okay? So we're going to use have, the verb to have, the verb to have, plus the subject, okay, plus the past participle. Right. So let's look at how this works in an example. If I'm going to ask something, suppose our subject is you, and we're going to be asking about study English. So again, we're asking how long? How long? So how much time? Okay. Now we are writing this question thinking that it started in the past and it's continuing into the present. So how long? Now, how do I do the present perfect for our problem here? You study English. Well, because it's a question, we're going to have the verb to have before the subject you. So how do I, but we still have to conjugate it, okay? So how do I conjugate to have with you? Well, it's have, right? So how long have, and then our subject, you, and then our past participle of study, which is studied, right? How long have you studied English? Okay, not so bad, right? We have, here's our present perfect right here. Have you studied? Okay, just that the auxiliary verb have and the subject you is inverted, right? Because it's a question. How long have you studied English? Perfectly normal question. Let's look at another example. Suppose we're asking about uh, Bob and let's say work in construction. Okay, so our subject is Bob, but we start our question in the same way. How long? Now, because our subject is Bob, we have to conjugate to have according to the verb, to the subject Bob. The subject Bob is third person singular, corresponding to he. So what is the form of to have that goes with he in the present tense? Well, it's has. How long has Bob? The past participle of work is worked. In construction. construction. How long has Bob worked in construction? Not so bad, right? Okay, so how do I answer these questions? How to answer these questions? How do I answer these questions? Well, there's two ways to answer. Okay, actually, there's not that there's two ways, but there are two possibilities. Okay, the first possibility is if we're talking about a certain period of time. In other words, we're talking about how much time. How much time? And if this is the case, well, we're going to be using the word for. Okay? So, looking back at our questions, we asked, how long have you, what was it? How long have you studied English? Well, we're going to use our present perfect, and then we're going to use the word for, and then how much time. How much time, right? And because this is a declaration, we're going to use the normal order of words, which is subject verb, okay? So how long have you studied English? The subject turns into I, right? I'm talking to you. You answer with I. I have studied. The past participle of study is studied English. Okay, now how much time? Well, suppose it's, 2 years, right? 2, ooh, 2 years. Okay, I have studied English for 2 years. Subject, our present perfect, okay? And then the rest of the phrase, which is how much time, right? So we have to notice that the word for is asking for how much time. We're not talking about a specific time. We're not asking when. We're asking how much time, okay, when we use for. The other way to do this is, and this is the other way to answer this, is if we're talking about a specific period in time, a specific point in time. And because we're talking about a specific point in time, we're going to use, we're asking about when. Not that we're asking, but we're going to be talking about when. So for this, we use the word since. Okay? So use the word since. Okay? Going back to our question, how long have you studied English? Well, you can say, again, I have studied English and we have to say when if we're going to use since, okay? So I'm going to put since and specific point in time. We're going to say, for example, last year. Notice that last year does not talk about how much time, it talks about when. So we use the word since. Now, so this all becomes very easy when we are able to make the distinction between wanting to answer with how much time or a specific point in time. A couple of caveats here for the past participle that we have to remember is that there is regular and irregular verbs. So the regular ones, regular verbs in the past participle and with ed. So some of the ones that we looked at right now, we talked about ask, turns to asked, work, turns to worked, study, turns to studied. Remember to turn the Y into an I. And another one can be, there's a lot more regular verbs. So for example, we can have talk, turns to talked, try, tried. Again, the Y turns into an I, D. Okay? It's not so bad. Wait, turns to waited. Okay? So the irregular ones, here they are. The irregular verbs in the past participle we have the verb, the very common verb be, which turns into been. Have turns to had. Know is known with an N. Speak spoken. And the last one, teach, turns to taught. So let's look at one more example, a question and answer, and let's see if you can do it, okay? So if I ask you, so if the question is, Sally is our subject, and Sally, well, Sally knows let's say knows Bob. Okay, Sally knows Bob. Okay, well, using how long? Okay, how long? Now pause the video and see if you can complete the question. Were you able to complete it? How long? We use our auxiliary verb to have conjugated with Sally as our subject. Sally is third person singular, so it has. How long has Sally known Bob? How long has Sally known Bob? Did you get that right? Now try to answer it using this. So our subject is going to be Sally. Knows Bob. And suppose that we're going to be using 3 years. 3 years. Okay? Pause the video and see if you can answer this. Were you able to answer it? Our subject is Sally. Sally. And then our present perfect. How do I do this? Has. The past participle of to know is irregular. Known. Bob. Now, here we have 3 years. Do you use for or do you use since? Well, 3 years is talking about how much time. So, 3 years, we're going to say, we're going to use the one that goes for how much time, which means for 3 years. Did you get that right? Let's try answering a different way. And say, suppose Sally has known Bob. So let's say 2018, right? Try to answer this. Pause the video and answer this, and answer the question using these words. Were you able to answer it? Let's see. Sally has known, right? Here's our subject, our present perfect, Bob, our object. So Sally has known Bob. 2018, we're talking about a specific point in time. We're talking about when. So that means we have to use since 2018. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. That concludes our lesson in the present perfect.